At this time, let me welcome a very special guest to the show, the owner and promoter of Route 33 Wrestling out in Spencer, West Virginia, Jessica McCumbers. Jessica, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you and I first started talking in the summer into the fall. I was going to come out to one of your shows, and then I had some car troubles and uh, didn't make it out there. That was, I think I ended up signing on to do Mistletoe Melee on December 7th,
Yes.
and that didn't work out. So, but I am a car reserved for March 1st for the show coming up on March 1st that we will talk about later, and I'm going
Awesome.
to get my butt out there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Can't wait to have you.
Great. So I'm going to start where I start with most people, but I think your story might be a little bit different. You know, when I do these podcasts and I try to introduce my audience to them, the first thing I ask is, "How did you find wrestling?" And in doing my research on you, I'm guessing, but not positive, that I'm not going to get the, well, I grew up with wrestling and my parents watched it and then we went to the shows when I was a kid kind of answer. So tell me, how and when did you find wrestling?
Well, every time I get asked this question, I always say the same thing. And I say that it started when I was 9 years old and I took a ballet class, which sounds really bizarre, but this is kind of a butterfly effect situation. I got into the arts really, really young. And actually, even before that, I went to the circus a lot with my dad. And I used to tell my parents I want to be an acrobat. That didn't pan out for a number of reasons. But when I was not, and actually before that, in when I was 4 years old, we moved from Annapolis, Maryland, excuse me, Pasadena, Maryland, to West Virginia, super rural area. And when I got into third grade, I was introduced to a woman named Jude Binder, who ran a very small art school about an hour away from me called Heartwood in the Hills. And we had seen some of their performances in some of the parades in our area, and they had come out to the elementary schools and things like that. And I was just totally transfixed by it. There was a lot of masks and colorful costumes and dancing and you name it. And so as soon as I was old enough, I signed up and I started taking ballet and theater dance with Jude. And I was with Jude for literally 20 years of my life, dancing with her constantly.
Mhm.
But as I got older, I kind of expanded out from dance into mask work, and that became a love of theater. And this really weird thing that I remember, but when I was 13 years old, I remember being at my grandmother's house in the summertime, and we turned on the TV, and the movie Troy was playing with Brad Pitt.
Mhm.
And something clicked in my head, and I said, I could make a living by sword fighting on television. This is so cool. I'm definitely going to look into this. So when I hit high school, I ended up enrolling in my school's drama department, stuck with that for 4 years. And then I was also getting coached by Jude Bender in theater to start preparing for college. Long story short, ended up auditioning for a ton of different colleges and was eventually accepted to the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. Went there for 4 years. So all acting majors at UArts at the time had to take at least one semester of stage combat. And I already knew it was something that I was interested in because, again, Troy, sword fighting, Brad Pitt. And that first semester, I just fell in love with it. And again, stuck with that for every semester of my college career. And the very last week of college for me, right before graduation, my combat professor, his name was Charles Conwell, great man, said to me, "Hey, did you ever consider doing stunt work for like television?" And I thought, well, no, but that is kind of what I'm interested in. And he's like, all right. He got me a scholarship to go to the International Stunt School in Seattle, Washington, and ended up going there for a month. Loved it. Got set on fire. Got to like skid cars
Oh,
around, do all sorts
yes.
of cool stuff. Yeah, and so I was actually, we're getting to the wrestling part, I promise.
Oh, this is great.
I was on my way back from Seattle and I had a layover in Chicago. And one of my friends at the time was texting me and said, "Hey, I know this guy that just bought a wrestling ring and he's setting up in Spencer," which was at the time about 45 minutes away from where I was living.
Mhm.
And he said, "This might be something you might end up being interested in with your background. Might want to give it a shot." And I said, "All right." So when I finally got back to West Virginia, I drove over to Spencer where I met my now husband and rolled around the ring for a little bit with some people, kind of got a feel for things. And I would say the rest is history. It does get a little more complicated out, after that. But like you said, I did not grow up watching wrestling like so many of my peers did. I honestly, nobody in my family watched it. My dad was like, we're not watching that garbage on television. Like, come on. But in 2014, when I came back from Seattle, some of my friends who were a little more well versed in it than I was said, here's some people you can tape study. And so I started getting into it. So really 2014 was when I kind of got introduced into this whole crazy circus of a world of wrestling. And that's kind of where I ended up.
Awesome. So first, let me tell you that my mother would be happy to hear. Was going to be loving this interview. My mom was a dance teacher for many years. We had a
Oh,
studio in our
okay.
basement. She used to do the tours in Atlantic City when she was a kid, like all that stuff. So she would love to hear your stories of the dancing. And I probably actually know a little bit more about it than I probably should. But let's stick to wrestling for right now. Well, no, let's stick with combat right now because I put this in the outline and I told you I was going to ask you about it. I'm dying to know
Yes.
the certifications you have on weapons. So I pulled this off of SAFD, which is at the bottom now, the stunt actors something. Um, and so, but I see
Society of
these
American Fight Directors.
Society of, sorry, it's just SAFD is right in front of me and I can't get the page up. Society of American Fight
Yes.
Directors. So, and on here, as I'm looking at this list, you have skill proficiencies from 2013 and 2011. Was that when you were at, would you say called UArts?
Yes, UArts. Yep. And those were the classes that I took with Charles Conwell. That was two separate years. It was my sophomore year and then my senior year that I got those proficiencies. I have admittedly not kept up with my certifications at all, like I've had time to. But yeah, the first year or second year that I did stage combat, I was certified in unarmed technique, knife, rapier and dagger, and broadsword, which broadsword I think to this day is probably my favorite. And then right before I graduated, I got certified in small sword, saber, quarterstaff, and sword and shield.
Wow. So what is it? So are you certified in these things? Yeah, this is in a college class? You're certified within the college class, or do you have to do other? How does that work?
So they would bring in somebody that's called a fight master, and that's a person that is certified at the highest level by the SAFD. And they would come in and essentially hold a jury for all of the students that have been studying, and they're the ones that would provide the certifications. So
Oh,
it's kind of stage combat's kind of a weird thing where you don't necessarily have to have the certifications to perform it, but it looks really, really good on your resume. And I like to think of it as like a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, like, yeah, I can sword fight.
yeah, absolutely. That's what I want to know. So what does it take? What did you have to do to, let's just say, I'm not going to do all these. The broadsword, you love the broadsword. When you're getting certified for it, what does that day look like? Or what does that
Um,
certification look like?
yeah, so at least in the case of taking it in college, you would be training for most of the semester, if not the entire year. You would get your scene. Well, first of all, you would study the different techniques. Your teacher would teach you all of the steps and everything you needed to know. You would practice a lot. We practiced twice a week for an hour and a half every time, and then we would have rehearsals outside of class, of course. And then we would get a scene from, usually it was from Shakespeare or some other kind of classical play, and our teacher would choreograph a fight scene to that, and we would have dialogue and character work that we would have to do on top of that. And then at the end of the semester, they would bring in the fight master. We would perform the scenes for the fight master. They would go away for a while, and we would all have panic attacks waiting to find out like what their notes were. And they'd come back. They'd either give us notes and have us do it again, or give us some adjustments to make, and we would do the scene again. And then they would go off for a little while again, and we'd all get nervous waiting for their final results. And then they come back and say, "Hey, you passed. You either get a basic pass or a recommended pass, or you failed." But nobody I ever went to class with ever failed. So our teacher was fantastic. So a nerve-wracking day on the day of certifications, but definitely a satisfying thing to go through if you do pass.
Right, absolutely. And I tell you, it sounds like the course of that over a class or whatever. It sounds very much like the year for my mom and her dance students. You start at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, you have a recital. Is it?
Yep.
I don't know that I'm comparing the two, but that's kind of the same setup.
Yep. Pretty much. Pretty much.
So now it's 2014. You meet your future husband, and
Mhm.
he's got a wrestling ring. I think I read somewhere the first thing you did was start training. Is that right?
Yes, and we'll use training as a loose term. At the time, I did not realize that wrestling school was a thing. This was a very informal group of wrestlers, and we probably didn't do things the best way. I think if I could go back, I would find a reputable school. But we learned the basics and rolled around a little bit, started getting comfortable with bumps and things like that, and just kind of progressed as we felt comfortable progressing.
Right, right. If you're comfortable telling me, who were some of those folks that helped? I mean, I know your husband obviously is one of them, but who else was involved in that?
Yeah, we'll stick with my husband for right now.
Okay,
I'm not really friends with any of those people anymore.
fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're training and well, let me ask you, let me back up. So your husband is training you. Well, he's not your husband at that point, but your future husband is training you, and he's performing around at this time? He's not retired or anything at that point, right?
Correct. And I would say he was not a full-time wrestler or anything like that. He would make connections with people that he already knew in the industry, and if they had a spot, he would go do it. And I would travel with him. We stayed just in West Virginia for the most part. We went to Ohio a few times, and I would watch him, and I would film his matches for him, and we'd talk about it. I ended up managing him for a short time, and yeah, we kind of just, we kept it casual and fun. And this was before Route 33 was even a twinkle in my eye. So at the time, I was still kind of just trying to absorb everything about the industry because, again, this was a brand new world for me. I had no expectations whatsoever.
Hmm. How many did you ever get to perform? Besides, you were managing your videotaping, but did you get to perform in the ring at some promotions at some point?
I did, and it wasn't until I started my own company. I've only wrestled one match to
Oh,
date, and I'm okay with that. Um, yeah, I tell people it's really hard running a company and fighting for my life at the same time. um, but no, I mainly just stuck with managing before Route 33 came into existence.
right, right. Okay, so but then at some point you have an injury.
I do. And it was not wrestling related. This is a crazy story. I decided to go for a walk one evening, and I was crossing the street in a crosswalk, and I got hit by a car, broke my femur in half,
Oh,
went flying across the pavement. Yeah, it was really not a fun 6 months for me. I got life flighted out to Charleston, had emergency surgery, went through 6 months of physical therapy. And it was a really bad time. I do not recommend that experience. 2 thumbs down, 0 stars. It was not good. But the blessing in disguise there is that I had the downtime then to kind of think about what I wanted to do in wrestling. And I wasn't doing the in ring stuff very much. Again, that was kind of just a casual, fun thing that I would do when I had time. But I started thinking, of all these shows that I've gone to with my husband and with my friends and that I've worked on and whatever, one thing that I kind of noticed was a recurring theme was that there are things that could be done a lot better. There could be things that are more polished than they are. There could be better marketing and you name it. And that is not meant to be a dig at anybody. But I see these things and I thought, I could probably do this. I could probably do this maybe better. And so with that downtime, I started taking some business classes, got some coaching through the Small Business Administration. And then in March of 2018, we held our first show.
awesome. So when is the injury? What year is the injury?
The injury is in October of 2017.
2017. Okay. And
Yeah.
so walk me through you those first 3 years before that accident, just briefly. Like you meet Mountain King, he's got the ring. You start going to some shows with him. Is that pretty much just all it was until the injury, and then everything snapped into place that you wanted to take the business classes and start your company, and the rocket ship just took off?
Yeah. I mean, somewhat, it was something that the group that I was kind of rolling around the ring with had been toying with. They had wanted to start a company or started to start doing shows, and it was. And this is going to make me sound like a little bit of a hater, but I'm sitting here listening to them, going like, "Okay, these are all ideas, but where's the action?" And certain people in that group really didn't care what I had to say about anything. So I kind of just kept my trap shut, but after a while, I started getting kind of annoyed. Like, okay, guys, it's time. Like, let's do this or let's not. And for unrelated reasons, that group kind of went their separate ways right before I got hurt. And so part of it, I don't want to call it a revenge story. It's not, but I was inspired. I was motivated to say like, hey, these guys weren't doing it. I'm going to do it. And maybe prove to them a little bit that it is possible if you, just get moving, make a choice, do the thing. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. So did you have any you said you're sitting there injured and you're thinking there's so many facets of this business that I can do better. Did you have any business background before you started taking these classes or marketing?
Not really. The majority of my business training was in college. I had one semester of audition technique, which was meant to prepare actors and theater people for the business. And so I kind of knew how to communicate with others in entertainment industry, but wrestling, of course, is its own animal. And so, I had a very basic understanding of how to approach getting something started, but I didn't know anything else. And of course, my knowledge of the industry itself was very, very limited at the time, just to the shows that I had been on and hearing what my friends and my now husband were saying after the shows, what their experience was. And so it was really just kind of a leap into the void and hope that I'm doing something right.
Right, right. And I can tell you, as I do my thing with my blog and everything else that I do, I have the same thoughts. I have no business training. I have no marketing training at all. But for me, at least, watching social media, you can watch patterns and what works for people and what doesn't. And even if you don't have any training, you can see what the companies that are going out of business did wrong, or you can just watch their social media
Yeah.
timelines a lot of time and see what they're doing wrong. Is that what we're talking about here? Or
Oh,
was it
yeah.
more than that?
A little bit of that, a little bit of actually in person going to the shows, seeing things that could be better.
Hmm.
And this sounds like a totally small detail, but whether or not a bathroom is clean at the venue, for me, that's important. And as a fan that's going to shows, I want to be able to, go to the restroom comfortably. And if I go in there and it's torn up and disgusting, I'm not going to want to come back. Or a really good example would be a show that my husband did, and I won't name companies or areas, but
Right.
we showed up. The ring was filthy. There were like babies, children in diapers with no pants on, jumping around and rolling around in the ring.
Oh,
The concession area looked really, really questionable. I'm like, okay, well, I'm obviously not going to buy the nachos because I don't want to have food poisoning or whatever. And so, like, I don't want to say I was sitting there with a clipboard, like making a list, but in my head, I'm going, okay, like if I start a company, we're going to make sure the venue is clean. We're going to make sure that our concessions area is well lit and tidy and has been bleached ahead of time, And these are all things that I pay attention to. And strangely enough, I got a review on, I think it was on Facebook, either Facebook or Google. Somebody said, "Clean bathrooms will come back again." And I
oh
thought
wow.
all the work paid off right there. So the devil's in the details. And so that was one thing that just by going to the shows that I saw these little things that add up. That I wanted to really pay attention to that, polish the experience, and make it a good time for everybody.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. So then when you talked about Spencer being about 45 minutes away from where you were before, do you end up in
Mhm.
Spencer because Mountain King has the ring and that's where he's at? Is that it? And if so, how
Yeah,
did he end
sort
up
of.
there?
So that's a great question. So, actually, both of us grew up in Calhoun County, West Virginia, which again is a little less than an hour away from where we're at now. And he was here in Spencer before I met him. I was still living with my dad at the time when I came back from stunt school. I was teaching and kind of doing the wrestling thing on the weekends and getting to know people and all that. And so Spencer, we always joke is like Spencer is the nearest civilization to where I was living at the time.
Hmm.
My dad lives way out in the sticks. And so I would go there, I would go to Spencer for grocery shopping every week or whatever. And so um, as time went on and Josh and I started seeing each other and we started a relationship, I ended up actually moving in with him in 2015. And so I've been here ever since.
Right. So then you talked about doing the business classes, the marketing classes. Did you ever get as far as like market analysis of Spencer? Like, did you ever sit down and go, okay, is this a good market? Why is it good? Why is it not? Or did you grow in Spencer and that's how it happened? You just sort of grew.
Yeah, we just sort of grew. I did do a little bit of market analysis unofficially as
Right.
best as I could, again with zero business acumen at the time. Um, but I think the draw for me, first of all, I'm a total homebody, and West Virginia is in its own little corner of the world. I like to say, especially Spencer, with it being such a small community, and there are pros and cons to that. I love living here, and I will say, I was in college for 4 years in the center of Philadelphia. And by the time I graduated, I was like, I've got to get out of the city. Like, I am a country girl at heart. I love the peace and quiet, and so that was part of it, the location. Also, our venue is literally 2 minutes away from my house, so that makes things a lot easier. Um,
Never hurts.
but I think, yeah, yeah. I think the big thing for me though is that there's not a whole lot of stuff happening around here. We have a movie theater. It's actually the Roby Theater, one of the oldest operating movie theaters in the country. We've got live music on occasion, but if you really want to see any other kind of live entertainment, you have to travel. And a lot of people in this area can't do that. There are families without transportation. There are families that don't have the gas money or can't pay, exorbitant ticket prices to go see AEW or WWE if they come to Charleston. And so part of it is just adding something new to our community, but also just making live entertainment more accessible for the people that already live here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And with such a small town, even like you said, Spencer is civilization, but being a small market generally, and then having people who have various reasons to be able to travel. I've talked to other promoters who tell me things like, I see 20%, 30% regulars every single time or whatever. Is your percentage higher because you have more of a captive sort of audience in that area? Do you have like a higher percentage of regulars?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we have, and oddly enough, a couple of our regulars actually travel from Clarksburg, which is a couple hours away.
Hmm.
And that's a whole other story. I'm so blessed to have them. I'm surprised they come back every time. But yeah, a lot of the people that we see are people that we know, and people that live immediately here in Spencer and the surrounding areas. It's a lot of word of mouth uh, that gets people in the doors. And we have a really good connection with the city government as well. My husband actually works for them. I used to work for them. And so I'm on a first name basis with the mayor.
Yes,
So,
nice.
that doesn't hurt either. But yeah, there's more of a personal connection with us and our fan base, just with them being close to us, but also because everybody knows everybody here.
Right. So it's not just like people who are locals, those are your neighbors and your friends.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Um, what was I going to say? So, do you have any competitive? Like, I don't want to talk about the other promotions necessarily, but as far as competition, how close would you say your closest competitors are, or other wrestling companies?
Um, we have in West Virginia Real Shoot Wrestling. I think they're probably the closest to us, and they kind of operate a little bit of everywhere in West Virginia. WVWE, I think they're in Parkersburg,
Hmm.
and we have IWA East Coast. Occasionally, they hold events down in the Charleston area, but I would say I wouldn't call them competitors. I know maybe in a business term they are. We compete with ourselves. I feel like we're kind of tucked away in our own little area of the woods back here, and so we kind of do our own thing. I wouldn't consider them competitors in a literal sense.
No,
But
oh,
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Yeah, no,
you're good. You're good.
I get it. Yeah, no, and I get it. Competitors. Maybe you're right. It's probably the wrong word because the next question I was going to ask you is on the flip. Have you ever, of course, I'm looking at your cage match, and I'm assuming that your cage match is pretty up to date because it looks like it is. I don't
Mhm.
see necessarily where you've done any combined shows with other promotions. Has that ever been a thought? Have you ever done any?
It's been discussed. It's never come about. It is something that's still on the table for the right company, if it makes sense to do it, and if budget wise and all the crazy logistics line up. But yeah, no, we've never done a crossover event or anything like
Hmm.
that.
Is there, and again, I don't need you to name names, obviously, but is there a specific promotion you think of that you have a relationship with that you might use in the future, or is it just sort of in a general sense, I am interested if the right opportunity presents itself?
A little bit of both. I think in the general sense, there are a few promotions that we share talent with, and I like to think that in an extended sense, we have kind of a relationship with those companies. Oddly enough, one of them is in Maryland, EWA. We have a lot of people that work for us that also work for EWA, and one of our titles is currently in Maryland. to be presented or shown on one of EWA's upcoming events. So that's really cool. Desire Pro Wrestling as well in Zanesville, Ohio. We have some people that work there, and I'm pretty good friends with the people that own that company as well. So we've discussed crossover events and you know, title defenses and things like that. But nothing solid in the works as of yet.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, EWA, of course, I have a connection with EWA. I've been there a few times.
Yes.
I guess, how does it come about that you share talent with that? Like, you guys are so far apart. So is there one performer that kind of made the bridge?
Oh gosh, I got to think about that. So oddly enough, I think I'm going to have to go back a few years here. So I don't know if you are familiar with the Grimy Scots, Hamish especially. I ended up being friends with him through the Society of American Fight Directors.
Huh.
This was right after I got out of stunt school. Um, Hamish also is a fight person, and I remember messaging on or putting a post on one of the community groups for the SAFD. I said, hey, I see all these workshops for, sword fighting and knife fighting and things like that. Is there anything for pro wrestling? Because to me, kind of the same genre of entertainment.
Hmm.
And I remember him commenting saying, no, but maybe we could put one together. And I remember he got a small group of interested people together. And I believe it was a pro wrestling intensive for the actor is what they called it.
Huh.
And Josh and I went and saw it, and in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we became really good friends with Hamish and his buddies, and they started working events with us. And then there was a crossover in 2000. I'm looking at my event posters up here for reference.
Oh,
2022. Oh yeah, I started keeping these as a souvenir, but like it's really helpful when I'm doing my marketing to be like, okay, what event was that happened on? Okay,
I'll
and I
bet.
could just like look up on my wall. But it was back in 2022, we started our first tag team tournament. And Hamish helped so much with that and said, look, I have all these workers that would love to do tag matches. And I said, okay. And he set it up. And so I made all these fantastic friends from that area, from Maryland. And as we went along, I think what really started it, this is another weird butterfly effect thing. It was in, let's see, June of 2022. One of our tag team competitors had to drop out because he got COVID. And so we had to find a replacement. And that replacement was Hero Napier. And never knew Hero. Hero had submitted a resume or something, messaged our page asking if we had any spots, which we didn't at the time. And so I'm scrolling through all these names that are in my inbox and resumes and trying to find a suitable replacement. And Hero popped up, and I clicked on their page and saw all of our mutuals. So immediately Hamish was one of them. Messaged Hamish and I said, hey, tell me about Hero. Is this what's the deal? Fantastic wrestler. I highly recommend. Okay, great. So we booked Hero. Hero showed up, did an amazing job. And we didn't have Hero back for quite some time after that, but they did make a return. Let me look at it in March of 2023. And I just became really good friends. Sorry, kayfabe. Um, I became really good friends with Hero, and Hero helped so much with the direction of things and booking and just you name it. I was able to bounce a lot of ideas off of them, and one thing led to another. Hero said, "Hey, I have this tag team partner that I'd like to bring in," and we brought him in. That would be Michael Anthony, who I have beef with right now.
Uh-huh.
And it just kind of spread from that. We started getting more and more EWA people. Michael Anthony would recommend somebody, Hero would recommend somebody, and then we'd get people back from the tag team tournament. And then, as it turns out, they went from the Renaissance Rumble to EWA. And then there's crossovers between the stunt world and the pro wrestling world too. So it's like my friends have friends who know friends. And so now it's just a big ball of love. And we have all these awesome people from Maryland that drive 6 hours to come work shows for us.
That's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that. It's hard to build community sometimes in wrestling, and it seems like you have a little bit at least. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
and that kind of leads me, and I'm skipping down my outline a little bit, but as I was on your website, and there was this description of Route 33 wrestling, and I think now is the time to sort of bring that into the conversation in the sense that it seems like it just, not even looking at my outline, just talking to you for the last half hour, it seems like you have a different viewpoint on a lot of things and a different perspective that a lot of people don't have. But also, you are one of the only woman-owned businesses in wrestling, and certainly one of the very, very few women-owned wrestling companies that are not all women. Um,
Mhm.
so how does that have, did that have any effect in making those connections, setting things up, dealing with talent at the beginning? And has it changed or gotten better over time? Or has it not had any effect at
I'm
all?
not
Is it just nobody really cared? Nobody really paid attention to it?
I'm not really sure. And I will say, full disclosure, I'm not a guy, so I really don't know what the different perspective might be. I'm sure there are differences. Men and women think totally different from each other. And I have been told, hey, wrestling is really benefiting from the woman's touch.
Hmm.
I don't know what the woman's touch is. I can assume that, and maybe this isn't the woman's touch, maybe this is just the boss lady's touch.
Hey.
Uh, I'm super duper detail oriented, sometimes to a fault. But I have been told by people, man, if all the companies I worked for were as organized as this one, like the world would be a better place. And so, in terms of speaking to talent and things like that, I will totally admit the first couple years that we ran, I was a total pushover, and I let people do whatever they wanted. And part of that, I think, was just initially, of course, not growing up with wrestling and not having a super in depth understanding of the industry. Uh, but also, I think it would be fair to say that probably some of that, at least subconsciously, would be being a woman in a male dominated industry. I have dealt with some crummy people. I've experienced a little bit of misogyny, but by far it's been a more positive experience than a negative one. For every crummy person that I've had to deal with, I have 10 amazing people, and I think probably in 2022, maybe about halfway through that year, was when I felt like I was really hitting my stride and getting more confidence and kind of taking control and being the boss, not just in name, but in, in the role itself. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much the gender has to do with it. I feel like the people that work with me would probably have a better answer since they've worked for men and women. Um, so I'm not sure, but I've been told the woman's touch is a good thing, whatever that may be.
Yeah, that's great. And I didn't want to focus this whole thing on you being a woman necessarily. I mean, that's not, how
Sure.
I wanted to play this, but at the same time, I guess, I don't know. I'll ask one last question on this state. And the thing that was in my head was your husband ever in your ear saying things like they wouldn't do that to a man? Like that's anything like that ever happen?
Um, he's not the one that would say that. I would say that.
Oh,
There have been a number of times that uh, I've dealt with stuff. I won't get specific, but
right.
everybody that runs a wrestling business deals with stuff.
Hmm.
And there's always going to be a little disrespect or whatever, and for whatever reason, maybe part of this is that I can be a little bit too nice of a person, or some of these people, knew me when I was more of a pushover.
Hmm.
Um, but there have been times where I'm like, okay, I'm asking for something very simple, that I need for this production to go forward. We'll say a promo, for example, and I'll set a deadline, and the deadline will pass, and I'll send a nice follow up message and say, hey, I need this promo. Okay, yeah, I'm getting to it. And then I still don't get it, or whatever the case may be. And there have been times where I've gotten frustrated. And I'm like, if I was Triple H, which of course, maybe that's not so much the gender issue, but the fact that he's Triple H running
Maybe.
WWE. I'm like, I feel like if it was somebody else, they might have that promo same day,
Hmm.
And so one thing I will say about Hero in this instance is that Hero gets onto me all the time. You're being way too nice. You're being way too nice. You got to be mean. And so
Hmm.
they've been helping me kind of crack down a little bit and get a little bit more strict with them and a little, use my teacher voice, as it were. Um, so yeah, I mean that's something that I've said before is just like, man, if I was somebody else, I don't think I'd be having this problem. But again, I think those problems are far less prevalent now than they used to be, and just about everybody that works with us now is like we're all on the same page, and they get the work done, and they do a really good job.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. I'm a little bit surprised by it, honestly. Knowing 40 years of wrestling business like I do, although I don't know as much about the business as you do, clearly from the inside, but just 40 years of experience in the business, I'm very that's surprising to me, and I'm glad. And again, I think it's part of that community you're talking about too. That it seems to be the theme with you. Um, One last
Yeah.
question about the before I move on to that is, as I'm looking at you on the camera right now, you can't see me because my camera's broken, but as I'm looking at you, I see behind you the support all women owned businesses. And so I guess exactly. And so I guess my question to you is that all the answers you've given so far have leaned towards, well, the gender's not really an issue. Do you market yourself as woman owned businesses? And what does that look like and how?
Um, I do occasionally. I don't feel like I lean in it into it too much. That's certainly not the focus of things, but I started leaning into it more after I was kind of encouraged to. And they said, "Look, this is unique. This is something new. There's not a lot of this going on. That might be a draw." And so I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so yeah, you get
Mm-hmm.
images like this. You get hashtags support women owned businesses. But also, I've had a few fans come up to me and say, "We would love to see more women wrestling, or we would love to see more of you, or we'd like to hear more of your story because I want my daughter, my sister, my aunt, my friend uh, to also be inspired by this and feel that they can do whatever they put their minds to." And so that kind of gave me a little warm fuzzy. And I thought, why not? Why not kind of not necessarily say I'm a role model or anything like that, but say, yeah, this is a male dominated field, but there's no reason that you can't do it if you're not a guy. So, like I said, I don't lean into it too much, but if it comes up and it's relevant, I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And in creating this company, like you were on your website, the description of your company is it really jumped out at me. And I'll tell you, I cut and paste a lot of these things on my blog when I go to a promotion for the first time. I'll be like, they describe themselves as and cut it in quotes. So I've read a lot of these, and yours stood out to me. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to read you the thing that stood out to me the most. Um, yeah, I'm cutting in the middle of a sentence here, but to set a new standard of professionalism in the wrestling community and use sports entertainment as a tool for positive change. When you wrote that, or even now, what does that mean to you, and what are you trying to do to effectuate those goals?
So we'll start with the professionalism thing. That was a whole big reason of why I even began. Because again, if you go back to um, going to these indie shows with my husband and my friends, and kind of seeing what was going on, and going, okay, this is kind of shady, or their marketing could be better, or the cleanliness could be better. Uh, all of that for me ties into professionalism. I'm expecting people to come in through the door, give me their hard earned money, and sit for 2 hours. I want them to see it as a professional experience. But it also goes the same for the workers. Part of my goal is that everyone that walks in through the door, whether you're a worker or a fan, is going to leave in a good mood.
Hmm.
And if you don't, please come tell me because I want to fix that. But for the professionalism, and especially in terms of the workers, we've all heard the phrase hot dog and a handshake, and it's laughable until you're the one receiving said hot dog and handshake after busting your butt and getting beat up and driving 4 hours and having a dirty locker room to sit in.
Right.
uh, so that was from the very get-go. I said, we are not going to, and maybe this is telling too much, we're not relying on gate to pay our wrestlers. When they show up, they get paid.
Hmm.
And somebody said to me, I remember when we first started out, well, what if they take the money and run, or what if they, do a horrible job? Okay, well, I'm out X amount of money and they won't be back. But at least I can sleep at night that I didn't short them, or they didn't come down and break a leg or something and walk away with nothing in exchange. And so that was the big thing for me, was making sure people got paid, because I knew that was a huge issue. And my husband dealt with that quite a bit.
Hmm.
So I saw that firsthand. But in terms of using wrestling as positive change, there's a couple levels to that. We've done fundraisers in the past. We donated to RAIN, which is the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the country. We've done that twice. We held a school supply drive back way, way early. I think it was 2018, the first year that we ran. And so, admittedly, we've kind of gotten away from doing fundraisers a little bit. I definitely want to get back into doing that. We have some ideas for canned food drives and like Toys for Tots, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But in addition to that kind of direct donation kind of thing, I think a huge goal of mine is just making quality family friendly entertainment more accessible to people who otherwise might not be able to experience that. Again, whether it's they can't travel to go see it or they can't afford tickets to somewhere else, we try to keep it affordable. We don't want to destroy anybody's wallet and just coming through the door. So the way that we do that is we give away tons of kids tickets every single event. In the past, we've teamed up with local public schools. We've given out thousands and thousands of free tickets to kids. Uh, a couple times a year, we try to connect with the old folks home, the Mile Tree Center here in Spencer, and get some residents to come out for free. They always enjoy the show and have a great time. I love seeing their photos afterwards. So we
Oh,
do that. And we've also donated tickets to like the low income housing residents in our area as well. So these, again, are people who might not otherwise have anything to do, or they might not be able to do the things they want to do.
mhm.
And this is of course not a day at the movie theater here in town. They're fantastic. And when we have live music and stuff, that's great. But a lot of live entertainment is very far and few between here. And you really do have to kind of get out of Spencer to see that kind of stuff. And certainly there hasn't been a lot of pro wrestling in this immediate area in a really long time.
Mhm.
So I like to think at least that we're offering something unique in the terms of live entertainment to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to experience something like that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And then in that vein, uh, bringing in marquee stars. So looking at your again the results and your all the stuff that you have posted, bringing in the stars. You've brought in a few, but it doesn't look like you center your shows
Mhm,
around them by any stretch of the imagination. How does that look? What is that
mhm.
strategy? And is that a part of keeping it affordable by not bringing in expensive people to do $75 meet and greets? Or
Yeah, certainly, certainly. So, I like to focus on one people that I know and trust can do a good job. But yeah, also it's very much about budget. And one thing I will say about Spencer is that I wouldn't call it an indie wrestling town by any means. Most of these people know who John Cena is. Maybe they'll catch a pay per view every now and then. We do have a few diehards in the crowd that have been watching wrestling since the '80s, and they know their stuff. But for the most part, these are people that just wouldn't otherwise look too much into pro wrestling. And so, one thing is that if there may be a star that we could bring in that is a star on television, but people here might not know who they are.
right.
And we had like very early on, it was I think our first event, we had Robbie E on, and he was great to work with. He did a fantastic job, but I don't think many people here knew who he was.
Hmm.
And because he was primarily, I think, Ring of Honor at the time. I want to say Ring of Honor. I may be wrong about that. Um, but he did a great job, and the crowd liked his match. But then it was a while before we brought somebody back in because of course, budget and whatnot. Um, I will say we brought in more recently Cheeseburger. We had a seminar for our wrestlers, and that was the main draw for us to bring him in, was to have a teaching opportunity for the roster, and it was very well attended. And he also put on an amazing match against Nick Hamrick. So, I think if the opportunity presents itself and it makes sense in the context of the event and what we can offer in addition to just a match, uh, by all means, we will bring somebody in. But I like to primarily focus on people that our crowd now knows and is familiar with, and has, this is the special thing about having a small community, has forged personal relationships with.
Hmm.
A lot of these wrestlers know our fans by name, and they will go hang out with them on intermission or after the show. And, they have conversations on social media about what happened. And I think that's kind of what's special about Spencer. With it being such a small, cozy community. And you don't always get that with a bigger name that we can only bring in, once every so often.
Right, right. Yeah, and that makes total sense. It's a business decision, I guess. If you're not going to get the pop, if you're not going to get the financial pop that's equal to the money you're paying out. I mean, like I said, I wasn't a business major, but sounds like a pretty easy decision, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
Um, looking at your website. again, like I said, I did my deep dive, and the one thing I noticed was the pay-per-view stuff. Well, the PayHip, where you have your
Yes.
shows posted on PayHip. How did
Mhm.
that strategy come about where you were going to do pay-per-view for your library, and why PayHip?
Oh boy. So that was a big experiment that we started in 2022 when I kind of started, we started hitting our momentum, holding a show every month, which was a crazy idea, and I don't recommend it. It was very stressful, but I just wanted to find a way to offer something in addition to the live events. And I've had a few people say, "Oh man, I'm so mad that I missed this event," and I'm like, "Well, I could send you the footage." And then I'm thinking, well, but they didn't buy a ticket,
Hmm.
And so we wanted to find a way to kind of make that accessible to people who, for whatever reason, couldn't make it, but also experiment with other things like animated graphics and commentary, which commentary I think uplifts a production so
Hmm.
much when it's done well, especially. So we teamed up with a few different commentators, and we have a handful of events up there. Admittedly, I am way behind on doing that. I have a backlog of like 15 shows or something
Hmm.
crazy. Um, I am in talks with a new commentator though. His name's Spencer Sterling, and we're gonna start working on that backlog. But in terms of PayHip, I chose it initially, honestly, because it was free and it was really easy to use. And I thought we'll see if it works. And so the new plan moving forward, and I have started on this, I just haven't really gotten too into it yet. We have started a Patreon account,
Hmm.
and so I'm hoping to kind of shift everything away from PayHip and onto Patreon at some point. When that will happen, who knows? But we are working on it. So Patreon, I think, is the next step for us there.
In doing that, in setting up the pay-per-view on the PayHip when you first started setting it up, did you ever consider the other, the options that are out there for streaming? I mean, did you ever
Right.
consider doing weekly TV on YouTube, or did you consider putting your events on IWTV or Triller Plus or whatever? Did any of those things, did you play with those, or did you go with the PayHip, you liked it for your community and stuck with it?
Uh, we primarily just stuck with PayHip because it was accessible. I did speak to somebody at IWTV for a while, and that it didn't really turn into anything. In terms of YouTube, the only thing we kind of do on YouTube is we'll do a weekly throwback match, but we do also do that on Facebook. And so I feel like that keeps people kind of engaged and like, oh, this happened. Okay, I know what to expect. Um, so yeah, I mean, in terms of that, we didn't really explore those options too much, just because PayHip worked pretty well for us. Um, but like I said, we are really behind on posting content on there. So hopefully, once we get this backlog caught up, we'll make the shift to Patreon. And I feel like more people will understand and know what Patreon is. Like we have the name recognition there, so hopefully that'll make it a little more accessible to our fans.
Right. Yeah. No, last question on that though, and I'm not going to make you get into specifics. I'm not trying to dive into your business, but was there a was it a noticeable or negligible effect for like bump from PayHip? Like, are you getting decent revenue from it, or is it just spotty here and there from?
I mean, it's spotty. We do have a couple regulars that will tune in.
Oh, cool.
And like I said, like the footage that's on there now is so old.
Hmm.
So there hasn't really been anything new on there in quite some time. But yeah, we got a couple regulars from other countries too, which is kind of cool.
Hmm.
Somebody out in Argentina or something is watching little old Spencer, West Virginia, put on a pro wrestling show. I think that's really cool. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've talked about on my show a lot, one of the things that I do every week on my show is make a YouTube recommendation for people to find free wrestling on YouTube. And the reason I do that is
Mhm.
because I think that most promoters that I've had conversations with, and or even ones that I don't, I feel like they feel like YouTube has let them down in the sense that when they post their content
Mhm.
on YouTube, it just gets lost in a sea of other stuff. The algorithm doesn't pick it up.
Yeah.
You've got 100 views on this, 62 views on that. Is that how is that your experience with your channel? I mean, I know you don't necessarily post full shows, but you do post full matches as throwbacks. Are you getting the negligible here and there
Mhm.
YouTube stuff?
Yeah, I don't think we don't get too much traffic on YouTube. Most of our traffic is on Facebook, and that's mainly just because people in this area, Facebook is their thing.
Hmm.
But also, admittedly, I've been falling short in pushing our YouTube channel for quite some time, so that might be why. For us, YouTube is just one more platform to throw our stuff out there. One of these days, when maybe I'm not a one woman show doing all of these things by myself, I'll be able to invest more time in kind of developing our YouTube channel. But It's not happening right now.
Wait, are we breaking news now? Is Jesse McCumbers looking for partners, or what's happening here?
Oh gosh, man. If let me tell you what, if I had the budget to hire a team, whew,
Oh,
I think I would be a lot less stressed out. Hey, but it's all good stress. I'm doing what I enjoy, but it is a lot.
yeah,
It's a lot.
I'm sure. I'm sure it is. So we talked about, or we're talking about these shows. So you've got the show coming up March 1st. The last show was Mistletoe Melee, December 7th. Like I said, I got the cage match up here in front of me. I knew the results from your website before because I was supposed to be at that show and I felt bad, so I was looking at them immediately. But um, what talk us through before we talk about March 1st? Talk about Mistletoe Melee and what might have happened at that show that will set up our conversation for March 1st here in a second.
Sure. So I think the first thing, and I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, but the Mountain King won the Rural Rumble and was awarded the Mountain Pass medal. And for those who might not be informed, the Mountain Pass is basically our money in the bank. You win it, you gain a title shot at any time. And so this is the first time he's had a title shot in a really, really long time. So that's exciting.
Hmm.
I'm excited to see that. I'm happy for him. So he actually announced last night on the Hitting the Ropes podcast with Brock Boulder, he announced that he's cashing in on March 1st, which
Oh,
I knew that ahead of time since he lives with me. We hadn't officially announced that on our website, but yeah, so that's a little spoiler. He will be taking on Gorgeous Morgan Taylor for the Route 33 Wrestling Openweight Championship on March 1st in the main event. So that's kind of a big deal.
yeah.
Let me look at my notes here so I don't forget anything. We have Grappling Inc. will be making their third tag title defense. I will not announce their opponents yet.
Hmm.
That's in the works. But they are set to make their third title defense, and I'm super proud of them. They took the tag team titles off of Hero Napier and Michael Anthony back in November, and a lot of stuff happened after that. And then they successfully defended those titles again against the Jagermeister and Michael Anthony in December at Mistletoe Melee. So they are bona fide champions now, and I'm very excited for that.
Yep.
And then I guess the last real big thing, important, not the last big thing, a couple big things. We do have the Jagermeister and Michael Anthony facing each other in singles action. So if I can rewind just a little bit, in November, Dumb Ways to Die, which was Hero Napier and Michael Anthony's tag team, lost the titles to Grappling Inc. And we had noticed some tensions growing between Hero and Michael Anthony kind of throughout the year. And they came to a head. Michael Anthony completely lost his temper, beat Hero down horribly, put them through a table. It was a mess. And then he put his hands on me, which was a
Oh,
mistake, I think. Yeah. Anyway, he's a pain in the butt. So Hero had to have stitches. I mean, their skull was exposed. It was a mess. And so we didn't expect to see Hero for a while. Hero came back in December, and at the end of the tag match with Grappling Inc. in December, which again, Michael Anthony lost that match. Well, thanks to Jager, I guess technically, but he lost his temper again and attacked Jager. And so this is twice now, two events in a row that he's attacked his tag team partner. Santa Claus showed up, and Santa Claus pulled out a giant metal baseball bat from
ah,
his sack of toys, and then proceeded to remove his hat and his beard, and it was Hero in disguise. And
woohoo.
Michael Anthony took a quick powder. So Hero and Jager are buddies again, which I'm very happy about. But Michael Anthony is not happy, and I really feel like he's a bull in a china shop, so to speak. So anyway, Jager has challenged Michael Anthony to a match in March. Jager finally kind of came to the realization that he wasted a year of his life following this guy around, and just for him to be turned on essentially. So that's a pretty big angle. But the big news, which we're kind of keeping under wraps until March, there'll be a big official announcement there at the Armory. We are introducing a new title, and it is going to be presented in tournament form starting in March and ending in September. The first two legs of the tournament will have two winners in March, two winners in May, and then they will go head to head in July, the semifinals, and then we will have a winner in September. And so the name of that championship is going to be announced on March 1st at the show. But we already have our first two competitors, and that is Jordan Carlisle versus John D. Crazy Hillbilly.
Mm-hmm. I saw that, and it looks like so there's one more to be announced still for March, and then two other first round
Yes.
matches for May. We're not ready to make that announcement
Mm-hmm.
yet for the March match.
The March match will be announced on Monday, this coming Monday, which is February 10th.
Okay, so everyone keep an eye on Facebook, right? Is
Yep.
that where you'll announce it? Facebook. Okay. So keep an eye out on Facebook for
Yep.
the second first round match for the new title and that tournament. And you mentioned Michael Anthony's going to be taking on the Jägermeister. I know he has a title defense in
Mm-hmm.
EWA this weekend. Maybe it'll make you feel better to know that I am Team Siler Mason in that match. Um, looking for
Yes.
Michael Anthony to lose that title. Um,
Yes, please, please take him down a notch.
Absolutely. But then you've also got a couple other matches I saw in there. So there's Hero Napier is going to be taking on JMD. How do you get there from December,
Mhm.
or why?
Really no reason.
Oh,
Hero wanted to compete. JMD is kind of a newcomer at Route 33, and he's wrestled twice once in November and once in December. Got beat both times. Uh, but Hero contacted me and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm feeling like $1,000,000 despite everything that Michael Anthony did for me. I'd like to show up and make a statement by beating somebody else
all
since
right.
Michael Anthony already has a match. Um, who do you got?" And I said, "Well, we got JMD." And Hero said, "Let's do it." So we have that happening. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see Hero back in the ring after everything they've been through. That beat down was absolutely vicious. But I'm glad Hero's doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other match that I saw posted so far, you have Bomani taking on Jeffrey John. You want to talk about those
That is
those two?
correct. Sure. So Jeffrey John is a bit of a rising star for us. He's been with us for a really long time, and he does a fantastic job every time he steps in the ring. He's a fierce competitor. He has a very wide range of skills, and he's had a couple shots at the title. Most recently, he went up against Gorgeous Morgan Taylor back in. Let me look at my posters
Mhm.
back in July of last year. And he thought he had it won, but unfortunately, through some crazy technicality, there was a disqualification, and Morgan Taylor managed to retain on that. So they've got a little bit of beef going back for quite some time, and that's certainly not the first time that they've butted heads. Um, but in addition to that, so back in November, I believe it was, Bomani made his Route 33 wrestling debut, and unofficially, it was during a match between Morgan Taylor and Gary Gandy. Gary Gandy being a former Route 33 wrestling champion, and this was a title match between the two. And Morgan Taylor, being the slimy sleazeball trickster that he is, managed to distract the referee. Bomani jumped in the ring, speared Gary Gandy, allowing Morgan Taylor to get the upper hand. Uh, he retained the title that way, unfortunately. And then Bomani returned to the ring and proceeded to chokeslam Gary Gandy, and made it clear that he is Team Morgan Taylor. So we didn't really announce this. We kind of kept this quiet, but I did suspend Bomani after that for an event, because why would you do that?
Right.
Um, and I guess from what I've heard, Morgan Taylor has rewarded him by sending him to Puerto Rico on vacation. And why? Like, if he has the money to do it, I guess whatever.
Right.
But uh, Jeffrey John really, really wanted to compete, and I thought, well, Bomani's coming back. Jeffrey John is a fierce competitor. Let's take Bomani down a notch. Let's calm him down. Let's simmer him down a little bit and give Jeffrey John a really good challenge. And I think he deserves a challenge because, again, like I said, he's a very talented athlete, and I think he's up for it. I think he's up for the challenge. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Now you've given us an indication a little bit of your feelings on Gorgeous Morgan Taylor. Um, how as the boss lady, how would you characterize this nearly it's coming up on a year title reign of Morgan Taylor? How's that gone? How's the Morgan Taylor era been?
Uh, the gorgeous era, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I talked a little bit about this last night on Brock's Boulder's podcast. As the owner of the company, I try really, really hard to stay professional as much as possible. I try not to let my emotions get the better of me, but sometimes there is a person that will just know how to push my buttons, and one of them is one of those people.
Mm.
So he was after the title. I'm going to rewind all the way to the beginning of 2023. He appeared to sort of turn over a new leaf in 2023 and made so many attempts to like reach out to me, and he bought me chocolate for Valentine's Day and like brought me coffee in the office a few times, and was being really nice. And I will be the first to admit that I bought it. I bought right into it.
Sucker.
And so, he was kind of trying to sweet talk his way back into the title picture. And I gave him his shot, and he blew it. He did not win. And as a result, he just kind of started going a little off the rails. He started acting a little crazy. And my husband, God bless him, I don't know how he puts up with me, had tried to tell me all year, all through 2023, this dude is plaguing you. I'm like, no, it's gorgeous Morgan Taylor. Of course, now saying that, I'm, oh
Uh,
gosh, how stupid. Um, but I didn't see it at the time, and he did, and so he challenged him to a match, and Morgan Taylor's true colors came through during that match, and he had my husband in a position that could have caused him very, very serious physical harm. And so I had no choice, but I intervened, and Morgan Taylor slapped me right across the face. Uh, he slaps really hard. I saw Jesus for a second, I think. And in that moment, though, I think the blessing was that my vision kind of cleared after I saw Jesus, and I saw him for who he really was. And from that moment forward, it was like, okay, I will never, ever have the wool pulled over my eyes again. And so, kind of rambling now, but in December of that year, we had our first holiday special, and my husband took on Gorgeous Taylor in a street fight and won. And we thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. In May, my husband had a title shot against Riley Rose, who was the champion at the time. And it was a great match. And I respect to both of them. Both of them are fantastic athletes, Riley especially. And Riley was a wonderful champion, did a wonderful job carrying that title for us for a really long time.
mhm.
And Morgan Taylor, we forgot he had the Mountain Pass medal, and he just cashed in at the right moment and took the title shot away from both of them and walked away the open weight champion. And that was back in May of last year, and he's held it ever since. Do I think he's held it in a way that is befitting of a champion? Absolutely not. He has exploited every single loophole that he could find to do that, to hang on to it. And that's who Morgan Taylor is. He, I have to give him a little bit of credit where credit is due. He is a smart wrestler. He's very cunning and he's very tricky. I don't really like that too much. I would rather see a champion, use their wrestling skill to defend their championship. But that's not the case with Morgan Taylor, and we've seen it time and time again. And he had me fooled for a while as wolf in sheep's clothing, but no more. So yeah, that's the kind of person Morgan Taylor is. And to remain professional, that's all I shall say about him.
Well, hopefully the Mountain King is in tip-top shape in another 4 weeks and ready to do the Lord's work, right?
I certainly hope so. I would love to see that championship belt back in my home again.
Fantastic. So for this March 1st show coming up, the big Mountain King versus Gorgeous Morgan Taylor championship match, plus all the others that we announced. Where can folks find information about it? Where can they get tickets?
The number one place is Facebook, facebook.com/Route33 Wrestling. We have a button that is live at the top of our Facebook page that will take you right to the ticketing site. We also have an event page that will also take you to the same place. We're posting all of the updates there on our Facebook page and on the event page. We also have an official webpage, route33wrestling.weebly.com. All of the information is there as well. And if you want the direct link to the ticket site, it is tinyurl.com/RT33W March 1.
Wow.
And that's where you can get your tickets and information.
Fantastic. Now, I also noticed that you do sponsorships. It looks like you already have some for this show. Are there still sponsorships available for anybody who's interested? And what do they need to do? And what are the packages?
We vendor space available for anybody that wants to sell something at our event. We have plenty of table space available, and they can reach out to us on Facebook or email route33wrestling at gmail.com. Sponsorships are closed for this event, but we are looking at our future events, our next one being May 3rd. So if anybody would be interested in that, they can reach out to us via those same avenues. We do have a variety of packages available, tiered packages. I won't go into all the details because
Right.
it's a lot, but we do also offer, we call it the a la carte option, where you can kind of create your own package, pick and choose what's best for your business. And so we hope we make that accessible and affordable to every kind of business. So if anybody wants any information on that, all they got to do is reach out to us on social media or shoot us an email.
Right. Sounds good. Well, listen, everybody, March 1st, Spencer, West Virginia at the Spencer Armory, right? Uh,
That is correct.
There it is. Right. Absolutely. March 1st, Spencer, West Virginia, Route 33's next show. The Mountain King versus Gorgeous Morgan Taylor headlining the show. We've got a new title that'll be announced. Two first round matches for that title. It's going to be a packed show. Listen to Jessica, go to Facebook, find them, get information about this show, and be there. I will. Jesse, it's been nice having you on. The boss lady made an appearance on my podcast. I am very happy to say that. I hope to have you back in the future. Maybe we can talk some more stuff, some business stuff and other things in the future. I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.